And the last thing we're gonna look at on this specific clip is our audio. So if I press play here, copied all that tracking information, and look over at the audio meters, which is why they are there, generally you want your audio to be between -12 and 6, kind of hanging out right around -12. That's gonna give you a good level on pretty much, any different device without sounding too low or way too loud. -6, that's gonna be pretty loud, but you might have something in your project that needs to be loud. If you go towards 0 or beyond, then you will start clipping and you can't fix that and your audio is going to sound really bad. If I crank this audio all the way up to 12 and now I play it really well, but you can see right there these red things. Final Cut Pro is telling me this audio is clipping. It is way too loud. And in the audio waveforms down here, I can see they all have yellow and red tips because it's way too loud. So I'm gonna bring that back down to 0. As you click and drag this to adjust your audio levels, you can also go to the little speaker icon and make those adjustments right here as well. So if you have something really specific that you wanna type in, you can do that. Sometimes when you're clicking and dragging, it's like really hard to hit a specific level. If you hold down the command key, it will go slower in smaller increments. So it becomes easier to dial things in to if I wanted this at -11, that would be easier. In this case though, I tried pretty hard to get my levels pretty decent when recording. So I'm gonna keep that at 0 for now. It sort of reduces that and does a more simple. And if I look at my audio meters, but I tried if anything, it might be a little low, but overall it's pretty good. Now that we're talking about audio, it's very important to have a good set of headphones or a really good set of speaker monitors while you're editing your videos. For rough cuts, it usually doesn't matter, at least to me. Like I'll do rough cuts on the computer all the time just with the computer speakers because I'm not trying to be super precise. But when I'm really fine-tuning levels and mixing things, I'm always wearing a good set of headphones. These are the Rode NTH 100s. I love these because they're super comfortable and I think they sound really good. And you can change the cable to either side, which is really nice. Or if you have a nice set of speakers that are accurate, that's important too. You don't want something that overemphasizes frequencies. A lot of headphones designed for listening to music and stuff really emphasize the bass, but if that's what you're using while you're editing your project, then it's not going to give you an accurate representation of what your audio actually sounds like, and then the people who listen to it are going to hear something entirely different. I also strongly encourage you to use wired headphones, so I'll plug these in here. The reason for that is because there's 0 latency. When you're using Bluetooth earbuds or headphones, there's always a little, very milliseconds of latency latency and that can be hard when you're editing and you're trying to sync things up, or you're trying to cut to a specific beat or a specific point. It can be sort of hard to align things. For a rough cut, probably doesn't matter. I do rough cuts with my AirPods all the time, but for actual editing, always use some really nice wired headphones or really nice monitors. If we listen to this audio, it sounds pretty decent because I'm using a really good microphone into a well-mixed preamp to track effectively. And if you click it to tripod mode, there is a little bit of reverb. You can almost hear the space that I'm in. The sound waves for my voice are bouncing all over the place. I don't really want that. Final Cut Pro does have a voice isolation option, which is pretty amazing. So if I click that and I play, it sort of reduces that and does a more simple track, and then it usually works really well. I can really reduce that reverb sound. So this is with voice isolation, but I try to start with the free track and this is without it. Track effectively, and if you click it to tripod mode, it sort of reduces that. Typically, I will use this very sparingly. I'll have 20 or 30% because I don't want it to sound too unnatural. Weird things can happen if you add voice isolation to a clip and then start cutting it up and it has to go from one isolated clip to another. It doesn't sound great, so I'm going to turn this off, and that's going to be something we'll do at the very end of the project. Otherwise, I actually like the sound of this audio, but there are a couple of things you can do if you don't like the sound of your audio. If you want to emphasize or de-emphasize some frequencies, which is something I had to do a lot more often before I started using this microphone, the Sennheiser MKH50, which I just really love the way that it sounds in this space on my voice, so I don't have to change much with it. However, if you want, you can click on your audio settings and go to equalization and click on this little thing that looks like a mixer, and it's going to bring up a thing that looks like a mixer. This is a 10-band equalizer. The left are the lows, the right are the highs, and the middle is the mids. You do have the option to select a 31-band equalizer. This can be helpful if there's something weird in your audio, like one specific frequency in the background that you want to just get rid of. You might be able to isolate that frequency and remove it or emphasize it if you wanted to. Generally though, 31 bands is a little too much power for any one person. So I usually use the 10-band equalizer. And then You can play back your audio and make adjustments. So if we pretend I wanted to add in more bass, I'll play this back. Sometimes you might get an error that says it was unable to track, and if that happens, all you need to do is change movement from free to tripod. It probably just means there wasn't quite enough movement among all the different axes. So you can hear it in real time, how it's affecting your audio, and you can turn it on or off. So if you don't like the way that your audio sounds, it's too high pitched or there's not enough lows or whatever, you can make some fine tuning adjustments here. We're gonna be coming back to this later on when we add in music to this project, but I'm gonna turn that off for now. The other option, especially if you already have experience editing audio, is you can go to the effects options, scroll down to audio, click on EQ, and you can add a channel equalizer. And now we see that channel EQ is available. If I click that mixer, this is a more traditional parametric equalizer like you might see in Logic Pro or other applications. Now, generally speaking, parametric equalization gets a little more complicated. So it's one of those things like if you've used it in the past, this is how you would use it in Final Cut Pro, but it's not something I use on a lot of my projects. For now, I'm just telling you that this is here. If you want it, I'm not going to use it for this project. Audio for this main clip is pretty much what we want it to be. Our video looks like it. That means this clip is good to go.